Hi, everybody. So I did want to take a decent amount of time today to go over our annotated bibliography. I'm also kind of mid discussion for my study group, so I'm sure it's going to ping a bunch of times. We're going to ignore that. Um, and essentially, what we want to understand about annotated bibliographies is that they're really good at harnessing your research as you go through. It's super useful to catch all of your citations as you're working. Um, when I used to do citations when I was in high school and even in my undergrad, um, I just didn't have a good way to catch a lot of my research. And I had been taught annotated bibliography, and I have to say, I wasn't always a fan of using it until I really was writing papers all the time, which should have been in undergrad, but I just didn't manage to make that transition until I was in graduate school. And now I make sure to organize all of my information, whether it's on paper or whether it's digitally, so that I just have it all sitting in front of me when I go to write the paper. So then what I can do is just plug in my citations pretty readily. I already have summaries. If I am doing summaries, if I'm doing a full annotated bib, I want to make sure I do summaries. Um, and I can even borrow from my own summaries, right? Because they're my writing, and I can use those in a paper. Um, or depending on your timeline, like I might just make my works cited page, which is different than our annotated bibliography because it's what I'm going to use in my paper. So I might just, as an adult professional student, make my works cited page as I'm going into writing, because I might only be working off of 3 weeks of research, and for me, keeping 3 weeks of articles in my head is not very difficult. For you guys who aren't used to that skill, keeping 3 weeks of articles in your brain is really, really hard, especially if you start getting up into the 20s and 30s, which several of you will. So I want to be sure that I have a good hold on all of the research, what's going where, how that's going to end up. And that's why annotated bibliographies are super, super useful. Probably outside of a comp class, no one's going to ask you for an annotated bibliography. So this becomes an individual study and organizational practice, and definitely one that we want to prepare in here. So I know some of you have done annotated bibliographies in the past. Maybe all of you have. But as we're going through this process, I wanted to be explicit in what my expectations are and how we're going to get there. So first things first, we're going to use MLA. I know you guys sometimes transition between MLA and APA. MLA is an English thing, it's a humanities thing. So psych, history, we're all MLA people. And so, of course, I'm going to go to Purdue OWL, and I'm going to go to the MLA format and citation guide. And what's so useful about the OWL that we've heard a billion times? Well, one is it's got all the rules, right? So if you're really needing to find those rules, they are here. It has its own citation generator, which we're going to use today. And it is the housing for a lot of samples of this, that, and the other. And so you can look you can look at I think annotated bibliographies and samples and things like that on here too, which of course is super, super useful. Again, there's kind of an overview of how to do a process. This is the general overview of what goes into a citation. And then it's broken down by, is it a website? Is it a periodical? Is it a book? Is it a magazine? Et cetera, et cetera. They all have slightly different rules. So I want to be aware that I'm going to use the OWL a lot. And I literally don't know a single person who writes research papers that doesn't refer to Purdue OWL. It is the place to go, and it's free. So it's not only the place to go, it's the best place to go. There's a whole wonderful history about how Purdue decided we don't want our students to pay for these resources anymore. They have to pay out the nose for these books every year. We're just going to make everything free for everybody. Um, I'm going to go ahead and start my research. Let's say my broad research is climate change. You should be way further into your research than just I'm going to research climate change at this point, but I'm going to use Wikipedia because I don't know anything about climate change, and Wikipedia is a place where I go to find basic information. And then if I want to use it somewhere, if I want to use it in an argument, then I got to double check it in a more responsible site. So let's say I'm using X, Y, and Z from Wikipedia, and I'm going to talk about the Paris Climate Accord, and I want to talk about, let's just say for the sake of brevity that I've read this whole page, and the thing that I really want to borrow from it is this Paris Climate Agreement. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go over to my annotated bib, and I'm going to put that there. Well, now I have to cite it, right? So I have to cite this Wikipedia article. So I'm going to go back to Purdue. I'll move this over so that they're next to each other. And I'm going to look at Wikipedia and climate change just for the heck of it. And you're sitting here thinking, oh, it's going to make my whole source for me. Well, it's not going to find all that and make it properly. So I'm going to use, look at all this stuff that it's producing. Oh, look, it does kind of make some of these. I guess I would have to really look at that. It does. Okay, so this is a good instance of me being a little behind the times. I'm going to go ahead and cite this page. And since it's already found it, it's probably going to give me the right citation. That's super useful. Here's all my info. Let's see. So this is new stuff, guys. I'm kind of working off of some new things. This is neat, actually. This can save us some time. Okay, so this is what I was going to show us. If it didn't do that, then I would have clicked on the manual button, and I would have answered these questions directly. So I want you to notice a few things. There is no contributor on this Wikipedia page, which, remember, this is hugely problematic from a research standpoint. If I don't know who wrote information, I do not want to use information. I'm going to pick on QAnon for a minute. I've been watching this QAnon documentary series on HBO this weekend, and all of these people believe in this thing, and they don't know anyone who is providing information because most of the stuff is published through anonymous websites. And so how can I trust anybody if I don't know who they are? Why would I put my trust in them is a central question that I have for you as a researcher. Well, my answer as an academic is if I don't know people who are giving me information, I am not trusting that information. No way, no how. So I don't have an author. This is concerning to me. But I do have a website. I do have who the publisher is. I do have a URL. I do have the electronic date published, which is, of course, the day that I'm looking at it, which is the 22nd of March. And this is it. This is all that I have. So I can go ahead and make a citation off of this, right? And where does it pop up? It is MLA 8. You'll notice it's already there. And I can copy the citation and paste it directly in front of my descriptor. We'll talk about formatting just kind of really quickly. We are going to practice formatting rules. We have not really talked about formatting all year because we've been more interested in the paper itself and the writing itself, but now we want to practice good formatting as well. One thing I want to make sure that I'm doing with good formatting is everything is Times New Roman, 12-point font. I've double spaced everything. Okay. You'll notice my heading is going to have your name, my name, AP Language and Composition, Annotated Bibliography, and the due date, which I think is 14 April 2021. I'm not even, I mean, I could put Annotated Bibliography right here, but the assignment is right here. So I don't need a title. Title is redundant. We typically don't write redundant information. You will need a paper title, but we don't need that right here. And my first piece of information is going to be my citation for my first source. We are going to alphabetize. So I might need to put something above or below here later on, but we are going to alphabetize. You're going to notice this hanging indent. I'm not sure, after 13 years of teaching, I'm not sure why everybody has a problem with this, but this is super, super easy to do. You just hit enter and tab, and you're going to move this line over. So the first line is not indented, the second line is. The third line would also be indented, etc., etc. So this is not very hard to do, but everybody seems to have a big problem with it. There are even settings in Google Docs and in Word docs that make this for you. You can see my copying and pasting did it automatically. So this is something I expect you to do. I know it seems small. I'm going to take off points if you don't do this. Because this hanging indent is here, I can very easily just plot my summary right underneath it without any spaces. And it's going to look nice. Look at how nice and clean this citation looks. Just looks so nice and clean. Now I'm going to put a space. Let's see, it did something weird for me. I'm going to put a space between this and an example of me going through all those stages. Let me go ahead and do one more for us using the OWL. Let's say I want to go ahead and make another create citation. We already did that. Sorry. Is there like a create another citation type thing? Let's just say I'm going to use a book. I want to show you this manual citation. This is how we almost always have to do it, where, again, it's going to ask me the information. We saw the autofill work, but in a lot of cases, the autofill is not going to work. And so I want you to be able to use that manual citation to fill in information. It's going to just ask you information. You just put it in. Just like we skipped the author because we didn't have that information the first time. If your book doesn't have a volume, you're going to skip this, skip this, skip this, skip this. You're just going to have the source, the publication info, which is like the publisher, and then the year that it was published. And it's super easy. It makes that citation for you. So let's go ahead and close the OWL, and let's close Wikipedia because we're not going to use those anymore. And let's talk about, now I'm doing better research, right? So I want to go to the databases. And of course, we've talked about this before. Let's see. What do I want to search for? I want to search maybe environment. Earth Environmental Science. Here we go. This would be a great database set for anything about environmental study. Here we go, environmental study and policy. Let's say I read a little bit about greenhouse gases on, actually, never mind. We talked about Paris Climate Accord. So let me look at Paris Climate Accord. And blah, blah, blah. First thing, right? Always look at the first thing. And I'm reading about the Paris Climate Accord, and I decide, yes, I wanna use this as well. Well, now I'm just gonna hit the citation button, make sure I'm on MLA 8. I think maybe what does select do? Yeah, copy it, paste it. Right, good example. All this stuff changed. doesn't like anything. I'm a big fan of changing this as you go along because it's a real pain when you're messing with all this stuff at the end. See, what did it do there? Didn't like that. I'm going to hit tab. See what happens when I hit tab. I'm going to hit enter and tab. Now I'm going to go down here and hit tab. That's a hanging indent, ladies and gentlemen. Get rid of that italicized. I'm going to write right. Notice it starts with unstable future. So yeah, it's definitely U goes after C. So I'm fine alphabetically. And now I'm building, right? I'm building. So here we go. This is weird to me. We don't have a title, or I'm sorry, we don't have an author. That's super weird to me. But at least it's from a journal. I don't know, databases, you're letting me down today. Well, I'm going to stick to it. I'm kind of icked out by the fact that that doesn't have an author. So I'm going to hold out. I want somebody with a name. Look at that. Nobody's got names on these things. This tells me it's probably like an overview. It's written by an intern or something at one of these journals. Yeah, I don't like any of these. Go figure. So what am I gonna do? Well, I'm not gonna engage with those because they don't have authors. I definitely don't want to be using piece without an author and in my final piece. So here we go. This looks like a news article, probably not super relevant, but maybe it gives me some good information to go on. So again, I can already envision this is probably not going in my final paper because this seems to be talking more about Trump and his decision not to get into the climate accord versus what the climate accord is and what its goals are. But we also have the 1997 Kyoto Climate Accord, so this is probably a good example of something I barely remember and is important. And you guys probably no doubt don't even know what the Kyoto Protocol is. And so this is something if I'm researching climate change, I probably want to know the major initiatives that went before, right? And what were their goals and did they work and did they not? So this looks like a good kind of basic overview of the last 20-ish years of the topic, and I trust this much more than Wikipedia, even though it's already 4 years old. That's an old article for climate, but still something kind of worthwhile. So I would much rather cite this piece. And I've got my author and everything. Again, it doesn't like any of my formatting. Gonna make sure I do all those changes. One other thing that I hope that you're getting out of this is that you just have to really determine how do I want to spend my time, because you can see it's really easy to find stuff. It's super easy to find stuff. We're not stopping. Obviously, I'm not stopping to read all of this while I'm doing a demo for you, because that would create an extra hour on my demo, and I don't want to do that. But I do have to go through and read these and pick out the thing that I want to talk about, right? What's the thing that's going to help me in the next phase of my paper? Now, this is a great example of moving the ball from super general information to more specific information that's more site-worthy, that I'm still probably not using this in my paper, right? I'm probably reading this and asking more questions to get to another source, and I'm probably using that third source. So my minimum is 15 sources. That's going to tell me, hey, they've done enough research that they probably know something about their topic. However, if you come to me with 15 sources, I'm a little worried that maybe you haven't done enough digging. And so this really expands, like, how many sources do you need to write this paper? Well, to write the paper, you might need 10. But to get to the 10 sources that will best allow you to write the paper, you might need 30. It just kind of depends. And research is definitely like mining for gold. You have to dig a lot of dirt to get to the gold. And some people are really lucky. They get to the gold real fast and they look like they didn't have to try very hard. And that's probably not true. And other people just have to spend eternity trying to find those good questions, that good research, and they get stifled by it. So that's why I want to give you about 3 weeks to do research, and that's not including spring break. So, 5 sources a week is the minimum. I would really encourage you to do much more than that. And maybe you do want to have days where you're gathering, right? I might gather 3 today and then read them all tonight and make my works cited, and then not do any tomorrow, and then try to gather 3 more the next day. That would have you hitting about 9 a week, right? If you did Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that's a pretty good pace. Then suddenly you have, what, 27 sources as opposed to 15. This is where it gets really, how do I want to spend my time, right? And how do I know when I'm done? The answer there is a little more complicated. Do you feel like you can write a paper with the information that you have? That's when you know that you're close to being done. And then I guarantee you'll have to go and find something more. That's just the nature of research. You kind of start your paper and then you realize, oh, I do need something more specific here. I can't argue that point successfully, so I got to go back and find one more detail about the Paris Climate Accord, right? Or whatever thing that you're researching. Hopefully this is really, really helpful. It's worth the time. Again, this would almost be a whole class day if we were spending a traditional class putting together this information. So thank you for bearing with me, and good luck on that research path.